cafes offer inviting spaces where you can bank, get answers to your financial questions, recharge your devices, and connect to on-the-house Wi-Fi, all with a handcrafted Pete's beverage in hand. Capital One cardholders get 50% off Pete's handcrafted beverages every day. With extended hours, ATMs, and plenty of space to get comfortable, Capital One cafes are built to fit your life. Hey, I'm Angela, and welcome to Creative Disruption. This series was created for the innovations and the challenges that came out of last year. Whether you're a freelancer, a side hustler, just starting out in business, or maybe you've had 20 years in, it doesn't matter. The whole point of Creative Disruption is to talk about how to grow, how to pivot, and how to adapt. In this series, you're going to learn about ways to manage cash flow, best insights on personal branding, and ways to market your business. And I know that if you're like me, you always want to learn, you always want to grow. So I'm really looking forward to sharing Creative Disruption with you.
Julie Khanna. I'm the owner of Khanna Connections. It started off as a public relations agency, and with the pandemic has really evolved as the world around us evolved. So these days it's a little bit more of public relations plus media and branding. I got started in public relations just because I saw the need for people to grow their businesses within the community. And a lot of that really came from just making connections with people and connecting with people's audiences. So once I saw that the need was there, it was really easy to just sort of fill in those blanks, right? And help people. So help sharing their stories, help telling people what are the things that make your business or your brand or the person themselves special. And I did start out in medical mostly because formerly I was a nurse. Medical terminology and the healthcare world was something that was so familiar to me. But these days it's evolved into really all industries that we represent.
The PR obviously has shifted a lot this past year. So can you share with me some of the ways that PR has changed this past year, just from your own perspective and with your own clients?
Sure. So I think public relations, the term PR is ambiguous in itself. Most people, when you ask the common person, what is PR, they themselves are not too sure, or they think of the conventional, traditional PR where it's hey, getting people on the news and, getting people in magazines and things like that. One of the really major shifts that the pandemic has brought about is a distrust in the media. People, not just a distrust, but also there was COVID fatigue, right? People were getting to the point where they were scared to turn on the news. They didn't want to look anymore because it was just so overwhelming, felt really dismal. I mean, it was a situation that was really stressful for everybody globally, and the news just became a source of distrust. So whereas typically and traditionally before this, right, getting one of your clients on the news meant maximum exposure. There was a good chance people were tuned into the news. That's where people were going for their local updates. These days, you would get people on the news and you would see almost that it wasn't being received the same. It wasn't being received well at all. If you were talking about COVID, they were scared. There was a fear around it. And if you weren't talking about COVID, it was almost desensitive. So some of the ways that we had to really, really pivot was help our clients build their own individual platforms, so their own independent media, because this way they were speaking to the people that they knew, that already trusted them, and speaking on topics that they wanted to hear. So people now, their platforms were growing, their Instagrams were growing, TikTok was blowing up, and we really just heavily invested in helping people become their own source of media. And I truly believe that is going to be the way of the future. I think that mainstream media is just not going to recover from this. So it is important that we do build our own platforms. And I think that people are going to go directly to their trusted source for all of their news. So they're going to go to their beautician for their health and beauty updates. They're going to go to their physician's pages for their medical updates. They're going to go to the car dealership or mechanic that they trust to get, hot tips on how to keep your car running well and the longevity. I think that people want to feel that connection, that emotional connection with the people that they trust.
I love that. And building a brand is something I think everyone across the board has probably heard of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's another thing to actually do it. So how, in your opinion, how do you start building a brand if maybe you feel like I don't even have a brand, or what are my steps to establish that?
Okay, that is such a great question, because even individuals are brands. People are a brand. Then your business is a brand. And your question is a question I get asked all the time. So one of the things I tell people is start with your messaging. And that's internal. That's an internal dialogue that you have to have yourself. You have to ask yourself, what do I want the world to know or think about me? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? If you're getting asked for advice all the time over, for the same types of advice, well, then you're being revered as a consultant, as an expert in your own right. So whatever that messaging is, and it's actually harder than people think. It's very intimidating sometimes to people to decide what is the messaging surrounding myself as the brand or my company as a brand. I always tell people, if you get stuck on that, there is nothing wrong with enlisting 10 of your 10 of your most trusted friends, family, colleagues, and asking them, hey, what do you see in me as a strength? When you think about me, what do you think when you hear my name? Because chances are you've already built a reputation, and that's going to go into your branding. And then the next step is making sure that messaging is consistent. And this is another thing that people miss a lot of times. We have lots of talents. A lot of people have a lot of things to offer, but it's really honing in on which ones do I want to eventually either sell as my brand or keep putting out there. So asking some of your colleagues, asking your friends, and hearing some of those hit words that keep coming up. If people are saying things to you like, hey, for myself as an example, right? Like, Julie, I think you're just a dynamic networker, right? I'm hearing that. I heard that a lot. I actually did this exercise. That was one of the things. You're a dynamic networker. You are incredibly talented at seeing an opportunity, because I feel like there's an opportunity in everything. And you have a passion to help people. All of that encompasses PR.
Can people survey an audience as well?
Absolutely. So you should definitely survey your audience, because that's the people that are speaking your language, right? They're going to want to hear what you have to say, but you also have to be willing to be speaking their language. And that's a good point that you made too about the size of the audience. I think because we kind of stepped into social media during our lifetime, right? One of the first goals that was so important to everybody was the amount of followers, right? Everybody wanted this tremendous following. And the truth is that it's going to always be quality over quantity. So no longer are we measured in metrics, especially, with the upcoming vanity metrics and these substanceless followers and things like that. You are in better positioned if you have 500 loyal followers that are buying your products, they are feeding into your brand, they're engaging, they're liking, than it is to have 10,000 followers and not make a single sale. You can absolutely make a living off of those 500 engaged, loyal customers rather than a bunch of dead weight. Yeah, so once you've got your messaging all buttoned up and you've got it across all platforms, you've branded yourself as the expert within your own right, within your own field, the next thing to do, especially if you don't have maybe a budget for like PR or somebody come and help you, you can start co-marketing, co-branding. So one thing that I think people make a big mistake with is seeing industry professionals that are in the same industry as competition, because they're not. There's a lot of opportunity to co-market with fellow artists. Like if you're an artist and you're looking to grow your following, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to another artist, maybe that, uses a different medium, and saying like, hey, let's go live together. Let's create a piece of art together. Let's leverage each other's audiences and each other's following so that we can both grow farther together. The most powerful thing is co-marketing, because word of mouth marketing is huge, but on social media, it translates to co-marketing and co-branding with other people. That's what that looks like on social media.
I love that. And what's your opinion on even people co-marketing maybe outside of their
100%.
Is that
It definitely does not have to be within your own industry. It doesn't. I just think that you'd be remiss to overlook your own industry. And I know that can be very intimidating when you think like, oh, they do what I do. And maybe that, you feel maybe a little bit judged or a little bit, measured by them. But the truth is we're all just trying to make it together. Right. And there's something to be said for they've got a following that already likes what you're doing, but definitely co-marketing outside of your industry is fine. Nonprofit, so any way that you can share, some love with your community and partner up with a nonprofit is always a good, strong tactic as well. It's a win-win for everybody, and definitely creating win-win situations. So if you can go to your local country club and offer like, hi, again, like let's say I'm an artist, I want to teach an art class, I would like to go speak to the kids at the schools. Anytime that you can align your brand with a community relevant activity, that's also a very powerful messaging. Plus you continue to brand yourself in a positive manner.
So one thing you said that I feel like some people might feel out there is you said something about seeing yourself as an expert. And I know you work with a lot of people within the medical industry, so they might naturally see themselves as experts within their field. However, creative people can sometimes feel almost strange, maybe saying that I am an expert. I'm an expert in what I do. Do you have an opinion or any experience that you've had where someone has maybe not felt like an expert?
So there's another piece to being an expert, right? If you, like I said, if you feel like people are asking you for the same types of advice and questions, there's something in you that they see. And yes, it's your knowledge, but it may also be your delivery. The way you are delivering and communicating that information that resonates with them. It could also be they see a little part of themselves in you, right? So that's where your audience, your loyal followers, no matter how much they are, something about that, they've made a connection with you. They like the way that you're delivering it. They like the way you're translating whatever it is that you're saying, your content, your messaging or your words. Because let's face it, right? Using doctors is a perfect example. So they are experts, definitely. I feel like that's, undisputed, right? Doctors are experts within their field. However, you can go to a doctor's appointment and leave there feeling unsatisfied, maybe nervy, maybe just more questions than you had answered because you did not connect. So still within yourself, if you can connect with people, if you're able to do that, you are not only an expert, you bring your personality, you bring your life experiences to the equation. And all of those things mean something. They all mean something. Think about your favorite influencer, your favorite person that you see online. There's something about them that resonates with you, something attractive to you about that person. So you cannot discount your life experiences, your personality, plus your expertise.
You have to listen to what your audience wants. And so sometimes even in your own mind, you think that you might be seen within your community as one thing. However, it's something else that your audience wants from you. And being able to listen and also just say, hey, you know what? I'm okay with maybe pivoting slightly. I think is so important because until you identify what your audience wants from you, that's what you're serving is your audience. So if you're not serving them correctly and actually listening, even if it's different than what you think, then you're not doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Business is not stagnant. It's ever evolving. Nothing will ever be the same, not from the previous year to the next. For when I started my business, right, I was intimidated. Okay. I'm sure that's a vulnerable feeling that a lot of people share. I made a list and I kept it in my phone of 5 people that I genuinely felt loved by, supported by, and encouraged by. So on those days where things just got hard or I was being hard on myself or, I had some self-doubt, I would look back at this list, and even that list changes year to year. It grows, it changes, people are removed from it. You have to be able to evolve. You have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to roll with the punches. Your business is never going to be linear, nor should it be. It absolutely should not be. It's growth patterns, and growth always translates to discomfort.
And I don't think we should feel rushed either. This is something that takes time. Mm-hmm. It's going to develop. And so there is no rush, just doing it day by day is what gets you through to the next level.
Absolutely. Day by day, the consistency and the consistent messaging, it will all help to solidify. It's called brand equity. It will all pour into your brand equity.
Awesome. Julie, how can people continue to connect with you if they want to continue to learn or maybe grow with what you have to share?
Sure, I'd love that. Please find me online. You can find me at www.khannaconnections.com. Or you can find me anywhere on social media. Actually, I just went viral on TikTok, which I'm so proud of myself because that means something to every 12-year-old out there, I'm sure. You can find me on TikTok as Julie Khanna. You can find me on Instagram, Khanna Connections, or Facebook as Khanna Connections.
I hope you enjoyed that interview, and now it's time to take out your pen and paper. Don't go anywhere because we are going to do a webinar where we discuss exactly what we just talked about, taking actionable steps for you to use, and we're going to do a live Q&A. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Julie. It's Angela here, and I'm so excited to come to the part where I get to talk to you. I want you to use the chat box. I want you to interact, ask questions. This is a part where we are going to really talk about what Julie just shared. She shared her insight as a professional within PR, and the important part of this series is to learn from people outside of your industry, right? To take what they know and apply it to your own business. And I think the main takeaway that I got from Julie's interview is she really talked about personal branding. So I really want to discuss with you tonight what personal branding is, what it means, and how you can really utilize it to grow as a small business owner. I think it's important to note here that personal branding is the process of intentionally creating and influencing your public perception, right? So this is done by positioning yourself as an authority in your industry, or also differentiating yourself from the competition. So I want everyone to think about, what are you currently doing in your business? And I want you to know this is something that has to happen all the time. I don't want to act like since day one, when we started our Hive Magazine, that we were thinking about all these things. We really weren't. And so all of these life lessons that we've had along the way are something that we want to implement in our business now. And we love sharing with everyone like this tonight. Make sure that if you have a question or if you've even had experience of your own, feel free to put it in the chat box, because I want to know what you're going through. I want to know your perspective on all of this, because that's what this is all about. So something important to remember here is that your personal brand is really how you present yourself both online and offline to your ideal audience. You know, your personal brand is the image that you put forth, and it's what you stand for. It's your values. It's what you're all about. And it's really the core of who you are. And I say that with an asterisk because I think you have to remember here that personal branding also has to be intentional. So you can accidentally have a reputation about yourself that maybe you did not mean to have put forth, but it happens because you maybe didn't think about these steps. So this is a good time that we all can self-reflect and really say, what am I doing to control the narrative of who I want to be and how I want to position myself moving forward? So I want to share something to prove the point here that I'm making. Think about this. So when you're marketing your business, it's really important to try not to just push products, right? Instead, try to build a community around your brand. I want to give you an example. I found this statistic I thought was pretty interesting, that 38% of moms are more likely to purchase from brands liked by other women. So what does that mean for you? What that means is that when you like something and share it, most likely people that are like you and are similar to you will probably like the same product as well. That's where personal branding really comes to play here. If you think about all the things that you've done and your business moving forward to this very moment in this day, it's really good to know that self-auditing is such an important part of the process, right? So whether you've actually done any of the things that we're talking about, if you're self-auditing all the time, you're able to really take a look at your business in a way that you can self-reflect and say, what am I doing? Another statistic to share with you. So I thought this was pretty cool. It says, according to research, as much as 94% of customers relate most brands that emphasize transparency. So that means when you're trying to create a positive relationship with your customers, honesty is the best tool. I really want to share with you some really actionable tips here where we can start saying steps to personal branding and what does that really mean? So one thing that you can do is determine who you are. Building your personal brand is about sharing your authentic self with the world. And when I say determine who you are, it's really the identity of your business, right? What are your business's values? What is its mission? What are you doing today that's really helping to identify that? So when someone clicks on a web page, somebody clicks on your social media, they understand what you stand for. And if that consumer wants to get behind you, that means they see themselves in your brand. They feel a part of who you are. Share with me if you want to in the chat box your own experiences with this or things that you have done, because I think that's really important. I will make mention. So when we started Hive Magazine back in 2012, a lot has changed since then, right? Especially since 2020. And in 2020, we also had to do a lot of self-auditing. We had to look at our business and who we were serving and what we were doing. And now, to this day, we are also seeing new things that we are getting ourselves into. Education space, sharing actionable tips, sharing what we have learned. It's maybe what we always wanted to do, but we never knew we would do it in this way. So I think now more than ever is probably the best time to really say, let me lay it all on the table. What is my business doing? And what can I do to continue to grow it? Something else to consider is to identify your core audience. And this really comes into play with personal branding. A way you can self-reflect right now and ask yourself these questions is a really fantastic way to see if personal branding is something that's been a part of your business or not. And if it hasn't, that's okay. So think about this. Ask yourself these questions. Who can I most effectively help? Who will benefit most from your skill set and knowledge? What are you most passionate about serving? And who will resonate most with you and your brand? You know, I think that when I think about that question for myself, I think about a lot of creative entrepreneurs. I think about helping a lot of small business owners, solopreneurs, and freelancers, just from our experience of being in publishing and having media. Take a moment and think about what are you doing to actually self-reflect for your own business. And I want to make mention that it is okay to not have all the answers just now. The whole point of being an entrepreneur is really saying, I don't know the answers all the time, and I'm willing to seek out and try to find help to figure that out, whether that's you're looking for a mentor, whether that is looking at another business outside of your niche as well, to really say what are the best practices for me. You know, another thing to really take a look and self-dive into what your business is doing is to also identify your target audience. You know, there's a core demographic of people who will resonate very deeply with you and your brand and what you have to offer. And this core demographic is really your target audience. You know, if you look at what you need to do to find those people, I want you to think about this. I know that it's easy to also assume a lot of times that you know exactly what you're doing. And if you do, I am so proud of you, because I got to tell you, when we first started our business, we did not know exactly all those answers. We might have fallen into that. We might have accidentally been doing that, but we weren't really stopping and saying, let me think about what we're doing here. It wasn't until maybe a year or two into our business we started doing a lot of that self-reflecting. And even since 2020, we've done the most self-auditing and the most self-reflection that we have ever done. So the point here is to take what Julie is telling you and really utilize that to your benefit. Working with other people, thinking about putting yourself as an authority. If now's not the time, more than ever, to do something like this, it would be right now, right? You need to really align yourself with where you want the messaging of your brand to go from here on out. So moving on here, we want to identify, obviously, the core actions of your audience here, and we want to make sure that you're consistently moving forward. Also, a third thing to think about is to constantly add value to your audience. You might be asking yourself, well, or maybe you're saying to yourself right now, I'm always adding value to my audience. Look what I do. And maybe that actually is true. But I think about the times that I've been on social media, and I think people probably think that they're sharing value, and maybe they mean it with all good intentions, but there's a rule that Jessica and I like to go by. I guess it would be a rule that's kind of like a ambiguous rule, where it's kind of the 80-20 rule. And this is to talk about value. 80% of the time, you want to think about sharing something of value to audience. So an example of that could be sharing a podcast, sharing a video, sharing something that is maybe helping your audience in some way. The other 20% of the time, you want to think about actually doing the sell. That's when you can do an ask, right? So you can say something like, join me here, or buy this. So when you're really thinking about value, take a self-reflection and just take a moment and say, am I actually doing and following somewhere within those lines of that 80-20 rule? And if you're not, just start thinking about what you can do moving forward that can start to fit within that, and making sure that your audience is always feeling like you're giving first and then asking second, right? And I know that's hard. We're trying to sell ourselves all the time. We're trying to always be putting ourselves out there and buy our products. And that's obviously so important as an entrepreneur. But there's, if you notice, this whole subconscious psychology part that kind of gets not talked about a lot unless you really go out and search for it. So I think if anything that we have learned over almost a decade of being in business is that you have to follow these little social cues and these little things. And if you make a mistake, you just fix it for next time. That's all you do. You don't make yourself feel bad. You don't say that you don't know what you're doing. You just literally learn by trial and error, and you get better every time. That's all you have to do. So I think it's important to say here that essentially that if you constantly give value to your audience without asking anything in return is really important. And the main thing people should take away when interacting with your brand is obviously the value that you provide, much like what we just mentioned. So I kind of want to cover right here some of the key takeaways that Julie really nailed and drove home in this episode. Her key takeaways are that you need to be creating media on your own social media platforms for your audience to engage with, essentially kind of like becoming your own media company. Also, you're going to want to connect with your audience by surveying them and giving them what they want. They want to hear from you, and your voice is important. And third is that collaboration over competition. Considering connecting with others in your field or niche and leverage each other's audiences. I want to tell you, going back to that other slide, a way you can survey is you can utilize something called Typeform. It's something that we've used. If you want to look into that, that's a good way to survey your audience. I feel like one of the best things that we've ever done was surveying our audience, because let me tell you, The worst thing you could do is literally tell people, here's what you want of me. You dish it out and you hear crickets. Once we actually surveyed our audience, and you might be some of the people we've surveyed before, and I asked questions, it was so nice to have actual data. It was nice to have actual feedback and go, I thought that they wanted this more, but actually they wanted something else. So that's a really important thing to remember. And also, when Julie said, collaboration over competition, nothing has been better than when working with other businesses. And look, you're not going to always gel with every other business, but there might be times where you can be of real service and of real value to another business outside of your niche, where you're both filling in a gap for one another. And that's a really clever way to interact with another audience so that you are helping someone and you're being of service to someone. So I don't know about you, but I feel like my main takeaway from this episode of Creative Disruption is really self-auditing and self-reflecting. And I want to make mention also before we leave tonight is that if you enjoyed what Jessica and I are creating here, and I hope that you do, if it's okay if I can share with you something exciting that we have coming up, it's going to be a boot camp where we are literally going to go for 6 weeks, specifically designed for creatives that want to monetize their passion. We are going to be starting this in the new year. This is something that's coming up. And if this is of interest of you, we'll be talking a lot about this in the upcoming weeks, but I'm going to go ahead and put this into the chat box on the comments, and you can actually join the wait list there if you're interested. And this is just a way for us to make sure that we're helping people that are walking the path that we have literally walked and we're still walking right now. And so if anything you can take away from this episode of Creative Disruption is that we want to challenge what it means to be a content creator. We want to make sure that if you're a creative entrepreneur, that you have the skills needed to grow and expand your business. And I know Julie hit it on nail on the head tonight. So our next episode coming up is with an awesome filmmaker. It's going to be on Monday, November 22nd. Yanatha is going to talk about so many different things. He's a professor of entrepreneurship. He made a movie in 2020, which we all know was insane. And he's really going to talk about what it means to go the distance as a creative entrepreneur. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And make sure to tune in next Monday. We'll be going live again. I want you to bring pen, paper, have your notes ready because I want to answer your questions. So have a wonderful night and stay creative. General Assembly is a pioneer in education and career transformation, specializing in today's most in-demand skills. General Assembly is the leading source for training, staffing, and career transformation, and they foster a flourishing community of professionals pursuing careers that they absolutely love. If you're ready to make a change today, visit generalassembly.ly today.